All right, so now we're down to the home stretch, and this is our final setup for this asset. We're gonna set up our render elements, some mattes, and I'm just gonna show you such a quick workflows I have for these things and our render settings we're gonna use for the final rendering. Now, we have everything set up here. I'm gonna just switch over to my render elements. I quickly went ahead and started it, but I will show you guys what I did here. So these are some of the defaults I usually export out when it comes to my render layers. I have a diffuse, reflection, spec. All these things are always good to have when it comes to comp in case we need to go in and replace. For instance, like in the previous videos, we talked about removing reflections in certain areas. We can go into the reflection pass and just edit it out and just comp it back in. The more the better. And then it's a quick balancing act because sometimes you might go overboard and now the render times are shooting up. So it's kind of a little bit of a dance. You got to figure out how to put out as much information efficiently when moving on to Nuke. So another big one that I like to have are light selects. So light selects are render elements for each individual light component. And I have here a quick render I can show you. So this is our render right now for the top render layer. Let's switch over here. It's for this body top beauty. And under our render elements, we'll have all these light selects. For instance, we could look at LS top left, which is this light over here. And this is how it's going to render. I'm just going to remove the background image, and that's what we will get, and that goes for each and every single light. Now we might not end up using all this, but it's always good to have it separate in case we needed to adjust. Like for instance here, now we have all our anisotropic reflections all in one, in case we need to edit these things out. For instance, this line, this is just that line light, how it's affecting everything. And we might want to say be like, you know what, I don't like that it's hitting here, I don't like that it's actually affecting this. We could just go into this render layer and just cut it out, paint everything black here and just keep the line. And we can also actually edit it. Maybe you want some subtle fall offs here, and now we don't have to go back into lighting. We have this information here and we can just edit it in. Now to quickly set that up, it is just a matter of going under the render elements tab here and just turning on a light select. Just hit add. Now that creates an empty V-Ray RE light select. Now I like to keep in the habit of just putting LS so I know it's a light select, underscore the name of the light. And now to keep consistent and just to not confuse things, I keep this name here. So if I open up in the attribute editor, I like to just kind of copy this and paste it here. Oh, it looks like I just copied and pasted something I didn't need. Let me just undo that real quick. Oh, I'm just going to remove it altogether. So I like to just copy the name here and just paste it right here. Now this makes sure that when you render it, that naming just gets put on here. So I kind of just wanted to keep it consistent, just keep the names going. Now by default, now it's just this empty light select and nothing's gonna render with it, but we got to just make sure we throw a light in there. So in your outliner, you scroll down, look for that empty light select, and then just drag and drop your light. Now for instance, I can grab any one of these and just drag it in there, and now it's going to render with this light under that light select. And it is a little bit of annoying. You do have to do this for each and every single one. I didn't have a script to do this, but so I just manually went one by one. But it's put in the work, and you'll definitely benefit you when it comes to rendering. Another thing I wanted to mention is when it comes to mesh lights, it's not really a single drag and drop method. For instance, I don't have a light select for the mesh light we're using for this side here. Because if I were to do something like this, I'm just going to remove this, and I'm going to, oh, I think I should deleted the light. I'm just going to delete from up here. Okay, cool. So I have this mesh light select, and right now it's actually rendering. It's right down here. There's nothing in it, and I wanted to fix that. Now, in order for getting a light select for a mesh light, you need to grab this mesh property light link tab thing here. This is what you need to parent onto your light select. Otherwise, it's not going to work. You can't do this, which is the light, and just drag it in here. At least in my experience, I have never seen this work. This, with my luck, it's going to work, but usually at work, I usually drag this guy. But you know what? Let's actually do this live right here and just see if it works. So I'm going to switch over to the beauty. So in theory, it should be this light that's hitting the top and the bottom. So it's not rendering. Now if I were to just drag it out, what I'm going to do is, where is the, there it is, this guy. I'm just going to drag that in here. And now let's just kind of center it here. And there it is. So that's how you set up a light select for mesh lights. You got to make sure you grab this node here instead of the actual light, otherwise it's not going to come out. Okay, so now you do that for all the lights. Now you have it all set up. I did it for each section here, for the body, top, bottom, main window. I did the lights for the grinder. This is why it's always important to make sure you name your lights, because it just makes this process much easier and much easier to quickly select and unselect the ones you need. Now, the next stop is our mats. Now, we could do the method of assigning surface shaders to certain things, like a solid red or a solid green or a solid blue, and using a solid black as holdouts. But you know, that can lead to just a bunch of different render layers for each different section, and then since we're using multiple cameras, each one of those will need its own set of cameras. So that could get really heavy really quickly. Now, nowadays, we use things called Cryptomats, which if you have not heard of it before or ever used it, it is a very powerful tool. I suggest you look it up. And in V-Ray, at least this version I'm using here, we have it under here, just Cryptomat. And all it is, you just basically just add it and then just leave it. That's pretty much it on this side of things. You just let this thing run, and what it does, it grabs, it assigns an ID color to each different piece of geo in your render layer. And then in Nuke, you can actually make a mask by just selecting that color, which is extremely powerful. So that means that we can do this render all in one, and then just basically just click and say I want a mask here, I want a mask here, and I want to make this mask. And then you can combine all of them, or you can say, listen, I want to add this mask with this mask, and then suddenly now you have a very custom mask you're just doing by just clicking. And now we're going to see that in the next video once we render these things out. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set up 3 render layers, because they're all going to correspond to the 3 cameras we're using, and we don't need any lights. All I'm doing is just throwing this guy in there, turning on Cryptomat, and just letting it run. The only difference between these 3 and the rest in terms of render settings is I'd like to go and make sure that my min sub divs are higher in these render layers than my beauties. What I found is that sometimes the more you have on your min, the crispier and cleaner the edges are in between mats. And it's always just a safe bet to make sure your mats are always nice and smooth and are able to comp correctly. Now, for instance, like our render settings, I'm going to send off, which I'm going to do some other tests, but I think these are a safe bet we're going to just send for now. This is going to be our render settings for our beauties. 116.01. Now this is the threshold. Is, you know, we could go even crazier and go 0.5, but I don't think it might be necessary for now. If I do need to go back, I will. But these are pretty good settings. Sometimes I might even go to 24. But let's just get something out quick. It's going to be 116.01, and I'll keep the min shading rate to 6. But then when it comes to these mats, I'm just going to change this. Maybe we'll do 6, and then we'll let those guys run as well. Now, maybe what I'll do is I'll set up one at our regular settings. I'll send the crypto mat with just 116, and then I'll send one that's 616, so I can show you the difference and just what that does with the edge, because the edges are extremely important. You want to make sure these things can comp correctly. All right, so that will be for the crypto mats, and I know it's kind of like you're like, what is that? I suggest you look it up online, and I was able to actually find the Cryptomat in GitHub for Nuke. Because in V-Ray, at least the license I'm using right now, it comes with it automatically. Literally just drag and drop here, and that's it on the Maya side. Now, when it comes to the Nuke side, you need to download it, and I was able to just get it. Just go online, just literally just put the Nuke Cryptomat download, and there we go. You can just download it from GitHub, and then we'll play with it in the next video, and I can show you what I mean. But that eliminates having to do all these very complex mats. And once we start comping, if we do need something crazy custom, that's when we'll sort it out. But I think just for now, I think we're ready to go. We have all our light selects ready. We have all our main render elements we need, the diffuse reflections, blah blah. And I think we're just ready to go. We're just gonna send these guys off, and then just start bringing them in Nuke.